one.
Well, I just want to say a few things about the two abortion essays that we read by Judith Jarvis Thompson, her defense of abortion, and Don Marquis' Why Abortion is Moral. I like both of these essays. I think they both have very strong arguments. They're both compelling arguments, and I think it'd be very difficult. I'm going to ask you to do it, but it's difficult to try to see who has a stronger argument, because really, I guess only one of them can be right, because abortion is either morally permissible, as Thompson says, or it is not, as Marquis says, but it's very difficult. But two really good arguments. And one of the things that I really like about both of the essays is that neither goes into the subject of personhood. That's not part of either of their arguments, at least, on the surface. In a critique, one may say that surreptitiously they are bringing in that concept of personhood, which is quite hard to avoid. But let's just say that they don't. They say that they don't. That is, our many discussions of abortion do hinge on whether we consider the fetus a human being. And the human being there needs to be somewhat more specified as person. That is, when we say human being in the full sense, we do mean person. That is, a person is not merely genetically human, but is a human being who we recognize as having rights, as being a person in the sense that they have the usual complement of characteristics which we demand in order to recognize something as a person. Self-consciousness, ability to think about oneself and conceive of oneself as the same being over time, capacity to act morally, to take responsibility for one's actions, etc. They ignore that issue and say that they can decide the larger issue of abortion, or the other issue of the abortion, not a larger issue, but they can decide it by other means. As we know, Thompson concedes, for the purposes of argument, that the fetus is a person, and then goes on to argue that despite this, despite the fact that she's recognizing, at least again for the sake of argument, that the fetus is a person from the moment of conception, that abortion is still morally permissible or morally defensible, or something that you can do morally. And of course, her famous and incredibly important and influential scenario has to do with a famous violinist. That is, if you woke up one day and you were connected to another human being who needed access to your body, your blood, connected by tubes, to survive, would you be morally obligated to remain connected with that human being for any length of time? And her way of dealing with it is, I think, very interesting, because her answer, of course, is no. You are not morally obligated to do so. But then when one may say, well, if the person who's connected to you has the right to life, how could you morally disconnect yourself? Because you would be killing them. There's no question about that. You would be killing them. And therefore violating their right to life. And Thompson says, no, you would not. Because the right to life does not mean the right never to be killed. The right to life means the right not to be killed unjustly. So there's no question that if I were to disattach myself from the person, the famous violinist, there's no question that I would be killing them. I would be killing them. I would be doing something, the result of which is their death. But that does not necessarily mean that my act would be unjust. That is, would it be unjust killing? Which is really what we're talking about here, because there are unfortunate situations in which we kill people justly. They're unfortunate, but they're not unjust. They're not murder. Self-defense being, probably the most prominent, but there are others, arguably others. So the question is, would it be unjust killing if I were to disattach myself? And Thompson says no, because I actually wouldn't be violating any rights of the person attached to me, because although they have the right to life, they don't have the right to absolutely everything they might need to live. Again, they have the right not to be killed unjustly. But I would not be unjust in disattaching myself, because they have no right to the use of my body. That is not something that they can lay claim to. So that if they were deprived of it, they cannot say that they were treated unjustly. Now, okay, right away, we may have very large questions about whether this analogy between being hooked up to the famous violinist and pregnancy are whether this analogy is a valid one. I guess that's for you to decide. I don't know. It certainly is pretty close in the sense, or it not close. I mean, it's similar in the sense that the fetus needs access to the mother's body in order to mature biologically to a level where it can survive on its own. And in depriving it of that access to the mother's body, are you treating the fetus unjustly? Again, we're stipulating that the fetus is a person with a right to life. There is some, I saw in the midterm that there were what I thought to be some confusion in terms of how far or in what circumstances Thompson believes that abortion is morally defensible. Is it only in the case of rape or life of the mother? I don't think so. I think that her argument really applies to abortion toute court, or as a whole, that under some circumstances it may be indecent to obtain an abortion, let's say a late-term abortion or something like that, but it wouldn't be unjust. It may be that we require people to be what she calls minimally decent Samaritans. But question about whether it's unjust ever to obtain an abortion is, I think, under her argument, it can never be unjust. But you take a look at that. That's a part of the argument you should pay some attention to. Don Marquis has an entirely different approach, obviously, but he shares with Thompson the decision not to go into the question of personhood of the fetus, whether the fetus is a human being in the full sense, and whether it has rights. Marquis' approach is to ask, well, we want to know whether abortion is wrong. Well, what is abortion? Abortion is a form of killing, and I think Thompson would agree with that. Right? Abortion is a form of killing, and the question is it wrongful killing? And which I think is a very good question. Again, it's a question that Thompson addresses. Marquis says, well, what is it that makes killing wrong when it's wrong in the first place? That is, what is the wrong-making feature of killing? And he says, well, we can at least stipulate that it's wrong for us to kill each other, that it's wrong to kill beings like us, you and me, even though killing may not always be wrong. But when it's wrong, why is it wrong? Well, we at least know that it's wrong if I were to kill you or you were to kill me. What is it that makes it wrong? The wrong is not the harm to anyone else, but to the person who's killed. That's the key feature for Marquis, is that the harm is done to the person killed. And that harm is that you're taking away their future, all the future experiences they would have had, all of the goods they would experience. So what makes killing creatures like you and me wrong is that it takes away a future like ours. So then the question is, does that apply to the fetus? And his answer is yes, that when you kill the fetus can be expected to have a future like ours. And when you kill the fetus, you are taking away that future. So the same feature that makes killing you and me wrong makes killing a fetus wrong as well.